I'm going to tell you why Darrick Yray is the most important person in the Florida State football program, not named Mike Norvell.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I'm your host, Brian Smith, and today I'm going to define for you why General Manager Darrick Yray of Florida State football is the second most important person behind Mike Norvell. Number one, he's the one that gets everything rolling with the recruiting evaluations. Number two, he does something similar with the transfer portal. And then number three, it's an opportunity to recruit your own roster and bring things together. Those are my opinions. I'm also going to give you the reasons behind what Darrick Yray does and all the things that go on with Florida State football around the clock right here on Locked On Seminoles. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So again, here are the three things. I'll say this several times. Recruiting, transfer portal, your own roster. Those are the three reasons that Darrick Yray is the second most important person behind Mike Norvell. If you don't believe me, after this show, you will. There's no way around it. Florida State football or any other program does not work with people behind the scenes in today's game. And that's why the general manager role is really expanding. It probably should have been 25 years ago, to be honest. Transfer portal, NIL, things that make college football even more difficult than ever are coming at all these college programs faster than ever as well. And we're going to talk about it. The first three things we're going to talk about: recruiting the portal and recruiting your own roster. That's my definition. I'm going to go into what Darrick talked about on Hear the Spear. It's a podcast that Dustin Lewis and some other guys that are involved with around Florida State football, they cover, and they did a great job interviewing Darrick Yray. Going to talk about a few of those things. It's really great to get reference points because Darrick just said, here's what I think it is. And we're going to kind of combine. And then finally, I'm going to let you all kind of make your own questions. I'd love to hear what you have to say, post on YouTube, etc., and come back to it. Number one, though, again, recruiting, transfer portal, recruit your own roster. Recruiting is number one, though. It's straightforward. There is no trick here. The number one thing Florida State has to do is recruit great players, right? How do you do that in today's world when everybody's looking for the same edge? Everybody buys the same information from like Under Armour and all the different places that have these camps. What's the difference? Evaluations, that's part of it. Relationships with high school coaches, that's huge. Relationships within your own staff, that's important. All of those things come together as a team effort. And eventually, and this is where the rubber meets the road, somebody like Darrick, or could be somebody else, Ryan Bartow, et cetera, in the back office at Florida State, depending on circumstance, have to be able to tell Mike Norvell one word that's very important and arguably the most important in the English dictionary. No. You got to be able to tell the boss he's wrong or he can do it better. That's what this role is about. No. If you cannot say that word, two letters, N-O, to your boss, you're probably in the wrong job anyway, especially in college football, even though head coaches are often egomaniacs. I don't think that Norvell is really that way, but they all have an ego to a certain degree or they wouldn't be head coaches. This is why we need to do this. This is why the time management works better if we go about it this way. That's all they're doing. Norvell has the whole program. He can't just sit around and worry about roster management. It's the most important thing, but there are a lot of other stuff. Boosters, got to have your own family time. You're dealing with the president. You're dealing with meetings, actually scheming and game planning. Obviously, Norvell has plenty of opportunity to spend his time wisely beyond roster management. If a guy like Yray is not involved, that's okay. There's other people. We'll talk about that in a second. But you got to have a person, a liaison between the coaching staff, Norvell, et cetera, and the rest of the athletic department. And they all have to balance out how the roster has to look and how to get it there. So let me give you an example of a really important part here. Right now, Florida State is getting ready for spring ball. You want to have as many unofficial visits during spring ball as possible. Cannot say that loudly and as many times as possible. It's an incredible thing to lose out on a recruit just because he visited one school unofficially instead of yours, and then he goes and visits that school officially and signs with them later. That's the name of the game. The next 2 weeks going into spring ball, the first few days of spring ball are everything for the 25 class and the 26 class and the 20. It never changes. Getting kids on campus unofficially is the greatest conduit to eventually having a successful recruiting class. Darrick Yray and his staff, they have to do it. So who are these people? Well, you got the digital staff. I'll just get that out of the way. I know a lot of people don't like this, but social media posts, edits, the players in like Florida State gear, a helmet, something that says, fear the spear, the climb, whatever it is. Those kinds of edits are huge. Darrick is involved with that. He also helps monitor when they go out, how it happens, how often, the photo shoots on campus, just basic photos with a player that's come in, that's been recruited by Florida State and Florida, Georgia, etc. All of those things he is in charge of in some way, shape, or form. Now, it may vary a little bit depending on the recruit, because maybe he doesn't have as good a relationship with the coach at that particular high school or whatever. But that, again, is a team effort. You got to have that person. It's the leader that can step down or step up depending on the circumstance. There's also the aspect of the timing, how the family is greeted. This is something that Darrick talked about on the podcast I mentioned a minute ago with Dustin Lewis and those guys. It's imperative that when they walk in the door at Florida State, they're greeted. They're happy about it. They feel comfortable. Darrick Yray is important just in that alone. His job, his salary is worth whatever he's getting paid. It's not enough just for that. Because if you make a bad impression in any line of business, well, bro, it's over. It's over. You have to be able to do that. So the people that he hires and or monitors that are assistants that are actually paid, interns or student assistants that are just volunteering, every one of them is vital to the Florida State program. It's not Norvell that's ahead of that. He's responsible for it, but let's be honest, he can't manage it. He doesn't have enough time. That's Darrick Yray. Finally, with this, all of those things and all those evaluations, and I don't know how this works. I have to go into and literally be in an office. Doesn't matter if it's Georgia, Florida State, Kentucky, or wherever, and just physically spend time. How they divvy it up for the transfer portal. This is mind-blowing to me. There are 133 programs off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, just Division I, and that doesn't even count lower levels that you're waiting for key players in the transfer portal. Take Jared Verse. He's from Albany. Did anybody really think that he was going to be a dude? Obviously not. He's from Dayton, Ohio. He's right down the road from Ohio State. Didn't have an offer from any of the schools in that area. He goes to Albany. Florida State gets a chance at him. They knew what they wanted. They were prepared. Figuring that part out, I don't know how it works. I wish I did. That is as important as anything in today's world. Where would Florida State football been the last couple of years if it wasn't for the portal? Even just the whole roster really had a position on both sides of the ball that was keyed by a transfer, but every position was at least touched by it. Jordan Travis, before the portal officially, was also a transfer from Louisville. So it's been going on a long time. Prove me wrong. Florida State has done a better job with transfers since the portal has been around than any other school. I think it's kind of hard to argue when you're 13-0 and a better part of half your starters or transfers that you made it work and come together. That is team chemistry. That is working in the back office. That is what Darrick and his staff have to do. Now, on the other side here in just a second, we're going to talk about where Florida State needs to get to with this. And also we're going to talk about what he defines, as I've got written down here, and what he talked about a little bit on the podcast that I mentioned a minute ago. First off, though, today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Make sure you check it out. All right. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Just like I was saying with Darrick Yray and the Florida State football program, finding the right intern, finding every little small piece of information that you can about somebody and quickly to fill a role is absolutely paramount. If you don't, even if it's an intern that's wrong, it can cost you a recruit. It can cost you a player to transfer. It's very important. With LinkedIn Jobs, you're connecting to over 1 billion people. That's right. Over 1 billion people have used LinkedIn Jobs in some way, shape, or form. Those are relationships just like in recruiting. So with that being stated, make sure you keep that in mind. All right. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Now, what did Darrick talk about on Hear the Spear? Like, what were his definitions? I gave mine. I want to give his, and they're similar, just different words and a little more detail, which he should have. But these are some of the things that he mentioned, and it's a great thing. They did a great job with that podcast. Identification, that's just recruiting, how it goes on, the internal part, the evaluations with it, how they work it. Customer service, I talked about that. That's unbelievably incredible. Graphics, media, and he talked about photo shoots a little bit more than I do. If you kind of put your mind around that and you think about on a weekend that Florida State hosts so-and-so, NC State, Miami, Florida State's playing a small school that's not important. It doesn't matter what it is. There's going to be recruits on campus. So you got moving parts. You got your star recruit coming in the middle of the morning before the game. 2 or 3 other kids you're not sure about coming in maybe a half hour before. And right before kickoff, another kid can't get there until later because he's got a longer drive. Maybe he's from North Alabama or something. And you have to figure out the different personalities with all that. I want you to think for a second, if you were Darrick and the Florida State football staff and all the interns and all the assistants and all the people, the graphics team and photographers, everything else, how do you coordinate all that? A lot of preparation is the answer. Because not only do you have times they're supposed to show up, I can tell you from personal experience, being around football offices, when players get there is almost impossible to guess because game day traffic stinks. I don't care what school it is. There's somebody going to have a flat tire, somebody going to get stuck in traffic, somebody's going to get caught behind a wreck, and then everything's off kilter. It's always scramble drill. That is not fun. Darrick Yray and the rest of the staff at Florida State or any other institution, they got to adjust. It's not easy to do, but that is their job. And again, with a smile, always happy, finding ways to accommodate the people in front of them because recruiting, portal, transfers, managing your own roster, all of the above, 80% of winning in college football is roster management. Never forget that. That stat will continue until long after myself and everybody listening to this podcast have left this earth. Roster management is 80%. And that's basically what he's in charge of in conditions with getting it on paper with the admissions department, getting it on paper with the staff. Hey, we do want to offer this kid, or we don't, or what they need to do. How can we communicate it to them so we don't lose them in case we want to come back to them later? All these different things happen on a recruiting game day visit. That's very difficult. Let's take the graphics and the photography. For those that don't know, I'll just assume that anybody listening doesn't know much about this or needs to know a little bit more to fully understand it. Kids love the photography. If you go to Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, you're going to see recruits in Florida State gear. They come on campus, they'll give them a helmet. Of course, Florida State's helmet's legendary. They'll give them a spear. They'll do different things. They do special effects, and they mix it in so many different ways. And Florida State's done a tremendous job with this stuff, and it attracts recruits. I can tell you firsthand in multiple cases, not just Florida State, there are recruits that have either showed me a graphic, told me about a graphic, both, etc., and then shortly thereafter said they're going to take an official visit to that school. Not always Florida State, but again, the graphics department is humongous. I know there are people right now cussing at the screen because they hate hearing that and or they don't believe it. It is fact. Fair or not, those are some of the things that are very important to the minds of a 17 to 18-year-old. Not the 35-year-old watching this podcast or the 60-year-old or whatever. Teenager. That's something you got to try to place yourself in, and it's probably hard. I'm 50. It's hard enough for me. I can only imagine somebody else who doesn't deal with social media that much. The social media department, in my opinion, how they coordinate with Darrick and then eventually with Coach Norvell and the rest of his coaching staff, it's everything. Florida State can't be successful on the field unless that works. That's just a small part of it. As crazy it is, it's still got some size to it, but the timing of it, who goes first and why, how long they spend with them, which coaches are in the photo shoot, that stuff is magical with all these kids because, I got a picture with Norvell. This is going to go everywhere. They're going to remember that. If Norvell's got time, I guarantee you the staff at any school wants the head coach involved if they can. He's not always there. But if he's not, how do you make it work where that kid's still going to have a magical moment? How am I going to remember Florida State? That's the objective here. Those kinds of things are very important to Florida State football. Also, before I go on to the final part here, one other thing that's very important for Florida State or any other school that does this, you always got to have a short list. You hear about coaches having a short list for assistants when one of their guys leaves. It's the same stuff in the back office now. If you lose one of your key guys, if Darrick left, they'd have to replace him like pronto. This position is important to a level that I can't even put it into finite terms. Again, he's the second most important person, in my opinion, in the program. You can't win without players. He's the one that keeps them there. He's the one that brings them in from the portal and recruiting. He keeps everything running. The general manager position is college football. With that being said, before we go to the other side, here's the last little bit. Think about what you would add if you were Darrick Yray inside the Florida State football office. We're going to talk about that next on this show. Finally here, let's talk about FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right. So I've kind of given the overview of what I think it is. Darrick Yray actually talked about it on Hear the Spear, and I gave a little sentence here or there of what he said. It's a basic overview, and then I gave a big example about game day visits and how complex they are trying to manage all the different parts. It's a lot, right? Is there something there that you think you would add? If you were going to look at it and say, how could I improve the Florida State football program? What would you do? Is it something as simple as a certain type of graphic? It could be. Again, I'm not kidding with this. I'll probably bring this up several times because I know I'm going to get comments about it. Let me explain it again. A simple graphic that has a player recruit, his high school uniform's taken away, and they put a Florida State one over him, and it's he's holding a spear, whatever it is. It has a saying on it. Could be a million different things. Maybe it's a jersey number that he wants. If he goes to Florida State and it was worn by a famous player, whatever it is, give me an idea what you would do to try to attract a player. Post your comments on YouTube. I'd be really interested in it because I think it's pretty much unlimited. This is about the human mind, which is the most vast thing in our world. There's no limit, right? And we're dealing with 17 and 18-year-olds, sometimes younger, because these kids, sometimes freshmen and sophomore, do some of these too. Elite recruits now, they kind of identify them really, really early. 15, 16-year-olds that are dudes. They come to your campus, you better have a plan. Yes, it goes down that low. Darrick and his staff have to be ready. And sometimes they're unannounced even, or really short notice. A kid from Tallahassee, Lincoln, a kid from Florida High right down the street from FSU decides he's coming over. You may have 10 minutes. What's your plan? So here's another way to look at it. What's your plan if you have somebody coming in that's the 5-star and you're trailing for him? He's going to go to Florida. He's going to go to Georgia. He's going to go to a program that you really don't want to see him go to. How do you get him over the top? Is it with the edit? Give me something that you think about in regards to a plan why Florida State might give him a different approach academically, socially, whatever it is. I think there's enough opportunity in the Florida State football world. We can talk about that forever. If you want to go that route, that's fine. But I think the social aspect, the academics, and then just the bond that Florida State football players, like especially under Bowden, is what I grew up with, was really good. Some of it was spiritual. Some of it was just a team togetherness because a lot of the kids were from the Panhandle, South Alabama, Atlanta, and on down in Georgia, etc. A lot of people that knew each other. Maybe you could talk about the history. Whatever it is you think works, I'm curious to hear what other people think. Because this is an area with the general manager position that I'm still learning about too. What I talked about today is just the basic. It's 10%. And I know it was a lot of information. But the general manager position is something that a buddy of mine mentioned to me 25 years ago that he thought major schools should have because the head coaches had too much then. That's long before the portal or instant eligibility after a transfer, etc. He was right. I don't think he knew NIL was coming, and I don't think he knew the Armageddon of the immediate transfer was coming either, which college coaches hate, but it is here. That's part of it. Roster management starts with the ability to have guys in your office like Darrick Yray making things run smoothly, or else you're in trouble. So again, number 1, 2, and 3 here. Recruiting, it's gotta be a home run. I mean, if what I got on this page with recruiting is not good, you're in trouble. Transfer portal's harder, and that's right there too. He's got to know his roster, what they need, how to talk with Norvell about it, and also be ready with other rosters too, in case somebody gets in. And then finally, your own roster. You got to be able to mitigate losses to the best of your ability. He's going to be involved in that in one way, shape, or form or another. And then it's all the game day stuff and the recruiting visits, etc. It is all encompassing. He has his hands in the entire roster coming and going. So the general manager position, Mr. Darrick Yray, is the second most important person to Florida State football. And I don't think anybody's going to change my mind. If you think otherwise, you tell me why. I'll be happy to listen to it. But until then, thank you very much. Everybody have a good day.